A revolution is not the same as inviting someone to dinner, or writing an essay, or painting a picture, or doing fancy needlework. It cannot be something so refined, so calm and gentle, or so mild, kind, courteous, restrained, and magnanimous. A revolution is an uprising, an act of violence whereby one class overthrows another. A rural revolution is a revolution by which the peasantry overthrows the authority of the feudal landlord class. If the peasants do not use the maximum of their strength, they can never overthrow the authority of the landlords, which has been deeply rooted for thousands of years. In the rural areas, there must be a great fervent revolutionary upsurge, which alone hundreds of thousands of the people to form a great force. Mao Zedong, 1927. I have found Mao to be one of the most interesting characters in Chinese history. Everything about him is just simply fascinating. Not only in the things that he was able to accomplish that were good for China, but then also those things that weren't so good for China. And this quote illustrates Mao's belief in perpetual constant revolution. Mao was radical in his thinking. He wanted to deviate from the Marxist idea that one must first put forth all of these preconditions before you can have a communist state. Instead, Mao wanted a revolution both socially, economically, and politically from the very beginning. He believed that if you weren't moving forward, if you weren't revolting, then you were moving backwards. However, the way in which he went about this created an interesting paradox that I hope to illustrate. Now first, let's talk about Mao as a leader. He was an extremely strong leader, a founder of the Chinese Communist Party, and helped oust the Nationalist Party after the conclusion of World War II. He quickly rose to the top of the party, where he did some very positive things for China. However, he soon started to create a disconnect between him and not only the Chinese people, but also his own elite political cadre. This, combined with the Great Leap Forward, which was a failed attempt to increase Chinese production, meant that he actually fell out of favor with the party. And which I guess it makes sense when you're not only alienating your party through calling 1 o'clock in the morning meetings and things like that, but also the Great Leap Forward caused great famine and actually ended with approximately 20 million people dying. So Mao fell out of his position and was replaced by Liu Shaoqi. So Mao wanted to get back on top. He enlisted the help of Lin Biao, who was an extremely skilled propagandist, to help develop a way for him to go back to being the head of the party. Lin Biao did a couple of different things. First, he started a campaign to paint Mao as, and I'll quote, our great leader, great supreme commander, and great helmsman. So in the way in which he did that, he first indoctrinated the People's Liberation Army. The People's Liberation Army then became a political, military extension for Mao, a way in which he could retain an extreme amount of power. The other thing that Lin Biao developed was the quotations for Chairman Mao, known in the West as the Little Red Book. This was a pocket-sized book of quotations from some of Mao's past speeches. These were then printed and distributed for free throughout the country. And it's estimated that there were probably somewhere between 5 and 6 billion copies of the Little Red Book printed. This, combined with a larger propaganda campaign, as I mentioned earlier, Lin Biao was just very good at propaganda, which culminated with Mao swimming in the Yangtze River to illustrate his youth, vitality, and in trying to connect him then with the young people in the country. Now, why were they doing this? What were they asking for? What Mao was asking for was a complete proletariat revolution against the Chinese Communist Party and the government already in place, which included then Mao himself. They wanted the peasantry to throw out all the leaders, all the intellectuals, the teachers, throw everyone out of their power positions and instate themselves. And Mao wanted a perpetual revolution. Like I mentioned earlier, if you're not moving forward, then you're moving backwards. And in a lot of ways, they got what they wanted. Thousands and thousands of people joined the Red Guard, which became an organized movement or part of the movement. These people would march hundreds of miles to come and see Mao at these gigantic rallies, and also they would go around enacting change, I guess if you could call it that, where they would beat intellectuals to death. Thousands and thousands of intellectuals and officials were beat to death. Schools, temples, government installations, a lot of them were burned to the ground. Now, eventually the fervor died down, and Mao, who everyone had idolized because of the various propaganda techniques, was then put back at the head as the head of the party. Now we can look at the paradox then. The first big paradoxical question is, was the Cultural Revolution really a revolution at all? On one hand, yes, the peasantry had to believe in what they were doing. They marched hundreds of miles to see Mao at these giant rallies. They beat people to death. They burned down buildings. People don't do those kind of things unless they fully believe in what they're doing. And also, speaking to the revolutionary component, one could argue that this was democracy at its fullest. It was a movement of all of these people towards that one common goal. However, even though all of these things happened, it was still a state-sponsored revolt. It was Mao who was asking for the Cultural Revolution, not the peasantry in and by itself. And furthermore, once they replaced the state, didn't they become the state themselves? So wouldn't they have to revolt against themselves? And so that creates a whole nother paradoxical question of how exactly is this perpetual revolution supposed to work? And to top it all off, the government never actually completely relinquished its control over large portions of the country. The People's Liberation Army, either through contacts with the Red Guard or through just sheer brute force, was able to keep control of important government installations, such as technology research centers, oil fields, things of that nature. Also, in many cases, the officials would just ceremoniously hand over their seals and other things, but still retain the control of certain provinces. So in a way, the state remained as these puppet masters above this revolution, with Mao being the head puppet master. And so, was it really a revolution, or was it just the state asking the citizenry to do something for them? Which in Mao's case would be get him back into a position where he was leader of the Communist Party in China.